In the middle of the picture is Jodi Arias, and right beside of her is one of her defense attorneys, Jennifer Wilmot. There's a picture of the crowd, media members inside the court. We are waiting on Superior Court Judge Sherry Stevens to begin the proceedings, and there's the judge right there to begin the proceedings to finally hearing from this jury.
The final seconds before she hears the verdict, and here we go.
Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and all counsel. Ladies and gentlemen, I understand you have reached a verdict. The verdict form has been handed to the bailiff. Please come forward. The clerk will read and record the verdict.
The State of Arizona versus Jodi Arias Verdict, Count 1. We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn, in the above entitled action, upon our oaths, do find the defendant as to Count 1, first-degree murder, guilty. 5 jurors find premeditated, 0 find felony murder, 7 find both premeditated and felony. Signed, foreperson. Is this your true verdict, so say you want it all?
Ladies and gentlemen, the clerk is now going to ask each of you a question. Please answer yes or no.
Juror number 1, is this your true verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 2, is this your true verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 3, is this your true verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 4, is this your true verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 6, is this your true verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 7, is this your true verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 9, is this your true verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 12, is this your true verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 13, is this your true verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 14, is this your true verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 16, is this your true verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 18, is this your true verdict?
Yes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the next phase of the trial will begin tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Please be here at 12:45. Between now and then, the admonition continues to apply. Do not speak about this case. Do not view any media about this case. Are there any questions? You are excused.
Please stand for the jury.
Heard it, the jury unanimous in their guilty of first-degree murder for Jodi Arias. It sounds like, and Lynn Sue and Mark, Victor, you can jump in, but what we heard out here, it's rather loud, they were split between felony and first-degree premeditated. But Mike, either way, we're talking about the possibility of the death penalty now for Jodi Arias.
Yes, that's still there. They're going to move into the aggravation phase tomorrow. I would anticipate that that'll last tomorrow. And maybe a little bit into next week, but she certainly still can. The death penalty is now still on the table.
Okay, so real quickly, let's kind of lay this out for our viewers. What'll happen when they come back in?
Well, they'll come back in, and the state can give a little opening statement with regard to what they anticipate to prove with regard to the aggravation. They could put on perhaps a pathologist to talk about the cause of death. The defense could put on a pathologist also, or quite simply cross-examine them, and then you can give a closing argument, just like a mini trial, and the judge will instruct the jury as to what the aggravating circumstances are and the burden of proof, and then they'll go decide that. Then if they decide that there's an aggravator with no sufficient mitigating circumstances, then they move into the penalty phase, and the same process repeats itself.
And Mike, when they go back into that room for the penalty phase, have jurors told you in the past that they felt like the pressure was off of them, or is this just as intense as coming up with a verdict?
No, it's just as intense, because
you're deciding life or death.
This truly is life and death. It's just as intense. To some extent, although this was a difficult decision, that one is far more difficult.
And do they have to be unanimous in that decision?
Yes.
All right, and can there be a hung jury when it comes to death penalty or non-death penalty?
There can, and then there's a procedure for that if there's a hung jury.
All right. Mike Black, thanks. I want to mention Mike's got to go. He actually has to work for a living, so he's got a court case. He's going to go away, but Mark Victor is still with us in studio along with Scott and Lin Sue. We'll toss it back to you guys for a couple of minutes.
All right, Mark Victor has to work for a living too, but we're not letting him go right now. Okay, so this was unanimous. All 12 jurors said yes to premeditated murder, and in addition, 7 of them also said yes to felony murder. So there was no doubt in their mind.
Well, at least not as to the premeditated. And remember, they have to be unanimous in order to come back with a guilty verdict. But it's important to remember at this point, she is still under Arizona law ineligible for the death penalty. This next phase that we're going into, the aggravation phase, is very, very important phase, and there's going to be a lot of important strategy that the defense is going to have to make a decision about, and among that is going to be the question of whether or not to let Jodi Arias talk to the jury and in essence plead for her life.
And would you let her do that?
Well, you heard Mike Black say he wouldn't, and interesting, just to show you a difference of opinion, I absolutely would. I think especially with a jury that has far more men than women, I would absolutely let a very attractive female get in front of them and, in essence, plead to them to save her life. I think that despite the fact that they've been death qualified, I think it's still difficult at the end of the day to impose the death penalty. It's one thing to be able to say, look, I could do it. It's another thing to actually do it. And so it would be my call. And of course, this is all contingent upon what Jodi Arias wants to do. Jodi Arias may say, look, I'm not doing it.
And Mark, how long will this next phase last? Could it go another 2 weeks?
It's going to go as long as is necessary for the state to present all of their evidence to try to prove that this particular first-degree murder was especially cruel. And that word especially is really important because, you know, if I'm going to make the argument in front of the jury to try to save her life, I'm going to focus in on that. And I'm going to say, you know what, this was cruel, this was horrible, but it wasn't especially cruel beyond that sort of what I would call a garden variety first-degree murder case. And a lot of that is going to turn on the medical evidence. A lot of it is going to turn on what they believe happened first, what happened after that, what could have been perceived by Travis Alexander, because the touchstone of this issue is going to be whether or not Travis Alexander suffered before he was killed. That's what it's going to turn on. But remember, even if the jury finds especially cruel beyond a reasonable doubt, that still doesn't mean she's going to get the death penalty, because the defense has an opportunity to present anything under the sun they want to argue in terms of mitigation. They can present anything, and the jurors can find those things by preponderance of the evidence, which is something we like to describe as 50% plus a feather, and each juror can decide for him or herself whether or not to accept that mitigation. They do not have to be unanimous on those mitigating factors.
I know that you said going in, when we got your opinion on when the verdict was announced, or when it was announced that the jury had a verdict, you said you thought this looked pretty good for the state. Now, I think you can open up a little bit more in terms of what we can deduce from this jury. There was a 4-month trial, and they spent just a little bit more than 2 days deliberating here. Yeah. Their minds were made up.
If I had to speculate about this, I would say that probably they went back all with their minds made up. They were very either unanimous on first-degree murder or very close to first-degree murder. And they probably said, look, in fairness, we don't want to come back in 5 minutes and say, look, we think this is first-degree murder. We need to review the evidence just to see if there's anything. That's what we would want them to do. This is a very important job. If I was the foreperson of that jury, I would say, let's start from the beginning and review it all.
All right. Well, we saw that there was very little reaction when the verdict was read. A small gasp that we assume came maybe from Travis Alexander's family, and no tears from Jodi, but an anguished look on her face. But I wonder what the reaction was like outside the courthouse. Let's check in with Mark Curtis again.
Well, the reaction was very raucous, Lin Sue. In fact, someone came by, and I think this speaks in part to the human condition. They said it's almost like the old Roman Colosseum, where you get the thumbs up or the thumbs down, and everyone out here was giving the thumbs down, meaning they wanted to see Jodi Arias be convicted of first-degree murder, including LaShawn White, who flew in from Atlanta, Georgia this morning at 8:45 just to be here. What was your reaction when you heard guilty of first-degree murder?
It was almost like giving birth for the first time all over again, because she deserved every bit of what she got. She made a mockery of domestic violence. She made people think it's okay to lie, to say that you've been in a domestic violence situation is a way of getting out of a situation.
So you're coming at this, LaShawn, from a woman's perspective. Were you a victim of domestic violence?
No, I was not a victim of domestic violence, but I've worked around a lot of people, and I've helped a lot of people out that have been in domestic violence situations, and I know how they feel. And to be played upon as if you are one and you're not, you don't know the emotions that they have to go through.
And was that the stronger emotion for you as opposed to what she did to Travis Alexander?
No, what she did to Travis Alexander is undescribable, because it didn't take all of that stabbing, shooting in order to make somebody like you. It was not going to happen. She was a psychopath. You
heard the cheering out here when the word went out that she had been found guilty of first-degree murder. What do you think the reaction would have been if she had been found guilty of manslaughter or somehow acquitted?
I think